Hello, my name is Camille Day, and I will be giving a presentation today about Canadian culture. So, first off is just an introduction to Canadian culture. The country proudly hosts various cultures from around the globe, making it one of the most diverse countries in the world, which is very unique. Sanjana 2024. In this presentation, I'll be exploring Canadian culture, mainly focusing on its multiculturalism, the influence of Indigenous people in the country's bilingual identity, along with other interesting facts. First, I will discuss the role of Indigenous culture. Then I will discuss how immigrants have shaped the culture in Canada. Third, I will talk about Quebec's identity. And lastly, I will talk about what it means to be Canadian. So first off, Indigenous culture. Indigenous cultures are those people who originally lived on the land with histories that go back thousands of years before Europeans even arrived. Each indigenous group developed their own traditions and ways of life. Major indigenous groups include Algonquin, Iroquois, Siouan, and Inuktitut. Canadian Identity 2013. An example of indigenous groups establishing their own ways of life is the Iroquois, who formed the Iroquois Confederacy, a significant political alliance. Canadian Identity 2013. So many indigenous cultures are also emotionally close with the natural environment. They hunt, they fish, they farm, and their spiritual beliefs often involve respect for nature as well. Many indigenous groups practice self-governance and had systems of law, trade, and diplomacy. Canadian Identity 2013. Indigenous groups pass down knowledge and histories through storytelling, songs, ceremonies. Art is also a vital part of indigenous culture. It reflects their religious belief and connections to the land and nature. Art was just their way of expressing, emotions. They express this through beadwork, carvings, totem poles, and there are also a lot of ceremonies, like I said. Canadian Identity 2013. When Europeans arrived, they greatly impacted indigenous cultures. They brought diseases, they took over land, they forced policies, they tried to change the indigenous ways of life. Aside from that, though, indigenous communities are still working to bring back and keep their languages and traditions and practices alive, even to this day. So immigration and its role in shaping Canada. A huge wave of immigration from Europe after the World Wars brought many new people, cultures, different languages, religious views. This resulted in changes in government, policy, and the development of new laws, and even laws that protected this new diversity. Immigrants started when the French and British colonized the land in the 1600s. Later in the 1700s and 1800s, people moved to Canada from the United States during the American Civil War. After both world wars, many more people from Europe came to Canada. Over time, Canada's government created policies to protect and support diversity, like I mentioned above. In 1971, Canada became the first country to officially adopt multiculturalism as a policy. This policy was later supported by laws like the Canadian Multiculturalism Act in 1988, which gave funding to different ethnic groups to help them maintain their cultures. Evans 2022. In Canadian cities, you'll hear many different languages being spoken, but Canada has mainly two languages, which are English and French. Overall, immigration created lots of diversity in Canada. In the workplace even, employers had to make efforts to include these people who were from diverse areas and had all types of different backgrounds. Employers had to create, inclusive environments for the workplace for all types of minority groups, such as women, people with disabilities, LGBTQ plus groups. Another example of inclusivity is Toronto celebrates Caravana, a Caribbean festival, while Vancouver hosts a vibrant Chinese New Year's celebration every year, Sanjana 2024. So this just goes to show, like that diversity in the country and how they included each diverse group through celebrations and whatnot. Next we have Quebec. Quebec has unique characteristics that set it apart from the rest of Canada. French is the main language here, and laws have been created to promote and protect it. This makes Quebec different from all the other places, cities in Canada, because English is spoken in all these other places, mainly. Quebec has rich traditions, stories, folklore that are all important to its culture. Quebec as a distinct society, 2020. The Quebec government is actively involved in the economy, using higher taxes to fund social programs that support families and education. This is different from the approach in other cities. For example, university tuition is generally lower in Quebec. Quebec as a distinct society, 2020. Quebec maintains a strong French-speaking culture, like I mentioned before. It has its own traditions, laws, institutions that differ from other English-speaking parts in the country. It celebrates French-Canadian culture through literature, music, art, and a festival. And many in Quebec have a strong sense of pride in their unique identity within Canada. Quebec as a distinct society, 2020. Overall, the ability of the French and English cultures to coexist in Canada reflects their commitment to cultural pluralism. So, lastly, what it means to be Canadian. Unlike many countries where dominant ethnic groups, key divisions exist. We have indigenous people, European people, as well as French and English Canadians, which makes it really hard to pinpoint a specific identity in Canada. Canada is recognized for its specific values such as inclusiveness, politeness, and peace. Canadian Identity 2013. Canadians are known for their role as peacekeepers, having a long history of taking part in UN peacekeeping missions. Sanjana 2024. The maple leaf and beaver are key symbols of Canada as well. The maple leaf stands for the country's natural beauty and unity, and the beaver represents Canada's fur trade history. Sanjana 2024. Lacrosse and hockey are very popular sports in Canada. Wayne Gretzky, for example, his famous quote, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take," is an example. They also had other sports in Canada, such as like curling, winter sports, fishing, canoeing. Canada participates in Olympics every year. Also, they have a lot of national parks that attract tourists for its beauty. An example is Canada contains 90% of Niagara Falls, Sanjana 2024. Canada has important historical sites protected by the government to preserve and honor Indigenous cultures and Canadian history. So that's ultimately a summary about Canada and its culture. Thank you for listening.